I want you to visualize this. We're living in the COVID-19 pandemic, but with one significant change. Instead of the virus coming for the elderly and for those of us who are immunocompromised, the virus chooses to come to young children, to the smallest and most vulnerable of us. They're the ones with the highest rate of contagion and the highest death rate. Now, think about this. How would we treat this situation of COVID-19 differently if that were the case? Would we be so eager to not wash our hands, to not wear a mask, to not enforce social distancing? Would we constantly harp on the fact that we need to reopen up the economy and get things moving again in the world of business and commerce? Or would we be a lot more precautious? Would we be a lot more sensitive? Because this time the suffering that's being endured is the suffering being endured by young children. This is something that I think bothers anybody, no matter what your worldview is, no matter what your life experience is. The fact that there are children and the fact that those children are not immune to the problem of suffering changes the equation for a lot of us. Now, today's presentation is titled, "Let Them Hear Our Yes," or the United Methodist Vaccine to a Global Virus. And in this presentation, what we want to talk about is the fact that right now, there's a virus coming for young children. It's not in the form of something like COVID-19, but it's just as deadly, and it can cause just as much pain and suffering to the youngest of us through their adolescence and going into their adulthood. But the good news is that the nonprofit organization, which is the Texas Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church, has a solution. Let's get into it. So, it looks like this. So we have the problem of poverty and crime that's associated with the parents of illiteracy and hunger. So here's just a few quick statistics for you. Currently, there are 45 million American adults who are illiterate. And with that come these two statistics, which are quite frightening. One, about 3 in every 5 prisoners can't read above a 4th grade level, and 3 out of every 4 people who are on welfare cannot read above a 4th grade level. And according to a peer-reviewed study, the most effective way for us to end poverty for future generations is just through this one simple measure. Make sure that everyone's reading up to grade level by the 3rd grade. So that's one part of it, the part of illiteracy, and then there's the part of hunger. Now, it's easiest for us to think that, we have all these food pantries and we have so many charities and we have the school districts providing food to children to make sure that they don't go hungry, to make sure that they don't suffer. But unfortunately, despite all of our efforts, it's still not enough in a lot of our communities. So what does that mean? It means that most of the times on the weekends in the summer month, kids are still going hungry. And these two problems of illiteracy and hunger lead to the virus that is a life of either poverty or possible imprisonment. Now, there's a solution that's coming on board through the nonprofit organization, of course, as I said, Texas Annual Conference, United Methodist Church. That is the conference that encompasses East Texas, Southeast Texas, and then the Brazos Valley part of Central Texas. So that includes Bryan College Station. What they're doing is Bishop Scott Jones, he was elected bishop in 2016. With his new this change in leadership to the conference, there's also been a change in philosophy, and he has now introduced a 6-year initiative called Love All God's Children. And what that means is the church is going to try to empower local congregations to work for the well-being of children within their communities through different programs. So after-school programs, backpack programs, literacy, so kind of hooking children up with a mentor, an older mentor, to help make sure that they're coming along in their reading skills. They're partnering with the local school districts. This is a holistic approach to child well-being that will hopefully end or possibly even eradicate this problem of poverty and hunger, which of course then leads to, poverty and crime in our communities. All right, and what's it all about? It's about bringing about justice to our communities. Martin Luther King right there. In the Martin Luther King I Had a Dream speech, of course, he challenges us to imagine a world where justice is the way, where we do justly by those around us and by the people that are living within our society. The Methodist Church, I think, is actually a church characterized by justice. Whether it be from our willingness to stay united in the face of something as divisive as slavery, or our involvement in the civil rights movement. It can also be looked to our ordination of female clergy, and despite the fact that we are divided right now on the issue of LGBTQIA persons in the church, we're still trying to have a dialogue to see how we can have those people more incorporated into the life of the church, which is much farther than other Christian denominations are going. Look, it's easy for us in a culture that's more secular than it's been before to look at something like Christianity and only see the no parts of it. We're no to this, we're no to that. We're restrictive people. We don't. We're life robbing. But I would encourage everybody, including religious people and non-religious people, on the religious side, let them hear our yes, and non-religious side, of course, please hear our yes. And our yes is this. Our yes is to the liberation of the poor, the eradication of poverty, the redeeming of people's broken lives, as well as the dignity of all human life. And that's what the Love All God's Children movement is all about. It all starts at a common understanding. Suffering is bad. Suffering is the thing that frightens us and terrorizes us to the bone as human beings. But we can all agree, too, is this: no matter what our religious background, no matter what our religious understanding is, if there's anything that we can do to have a preventative measure that eradicates the suffering of young children, well, that's something that we need to look into, and that's something that we need to embrace. It's time for our culture to hear our yes to the end of suffering of young children. Thank you.